Sam, what happened to Tree?
I, well, do you want?
I
I'll tell
want
it.
the long. I want the long version.
This is the long version. Okay, we'll start from the beginning then. So,
Let's start with what happened when it went away, and then we'll go all the way back.
okay. Okay.
Because I think a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, I knew Tree, and then it seemed like they disappeared.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear the what happened to Tree story, and then we can take it back to the very beginning.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we're to start with what happened, but I think we were growing. We were just we kept on growing. We kept on getting bigger every year. I had different employees that were working with me. Some would work out for a while, and some would, have to find somebody else. And so I was just working for every day, probably from 9 a.m. to sometimes to 4 a.m. in the morning. And so at times, and usually that night stuff was like when I like to try to design parts. It was just quiet, and there's nothing going on, and just like there's nothing else to do, so that would help me like focus on stuff. And so I was just working lots of hours, have gone through different employees. We got to we had brought a lot of inventory in, and so we've had a bazillion SKUs of every single product that we made, and I think it was 6 colors or something that we had for each one. And so we were just so heavy on inventory, and I had a lot of debt accumulated from so it was always tried to be an American made brand in the beginning, is what I wanted to do. And it was, for me, it was all about quality. That's what it was, just the source of quality is what I wanted, and so that I could control that better when it was being made here in the beginning. But then that's another story. But we ended up going to finally bring everything to Taiwan. And when I did do that, sad to say, it was, the quality was more consistent and actually better than the stuff I was getting in the USA for a lot of the things I was making. And so in that process, that they were kind of fronting us stuff, when we couldn't pay for it. They'd be like, here's 50 grand worth of product, just take it and just pay us later. So it kind of got like that, and that kind of built up. And so then, the BMX market at that time sort of just kind of going down. There was just saturated with stuff. There was just so many, everybody had a million colors, and everybody was slapping their name on every product they could, to put their name on it. And so it was just saturated. And so we just got to a point where it just wasn't selling, stuff. We were still selling some things, but it was just so bloated. And so I had lots of debt, and that was just burnt out. So I've been, just pulling, super long days for 10, almost 15 years, I guess 10 years at that time, or 10 to 15 years. And so I was going to different business seminars and stuff, and at one time I was kind of just taking a walk, and I was like, what is my purpose? What am I here for? And I knew that my purpose was to do this bike company, and that was always part of my major life purpose, to do this bike company. But then it just something inside me was like, is there something else I should be doing? And and so forth. And so, which we'll talk about later, but I've always been interested in health and nutrition. And so I was like, I want to do this, this thing in nutrition and health. So how I came up with that, it was I need to create this other thing, which is I need to get get into real estate. So real estate is the reason for real estate is so to kind of get income and become kind of retired. And it was my goal, to get in a position where I have these rental properties and this whole situation and become retired. And then I can focus on creating this health food business that I wanted to do in the future, and also continue to do Tree. So these are my 3 major life purposes, is these 3 things. So that was all right, I'm going to focus on trying to do this real estate thing. It became very involved. It was I knew nothing about real estate. It was I was so esoteric about it. I was just how does this piece of paper say this guy owns this land? I was so in the weeds, and so there was a very long learning curve for me. And so at some point I was all right, I need to I got this other guy working on Tree. I'm just going to give him the keys and let him run it. And then I'm just going to totally focus on some real estate. Couple of years, I'll be right back. And 10 years later, here we are. So, it just took way longer to get to the place that I wanted to be, and I thought it was just gonna, you think something's gonna be so fast. Sometimes we think things are gonna take, not much time, and it just took me forever to get to where I'm at this point in time. And so I don't know. I think that's the story. So that's kind of what happened. So no, that's not the finish. So then I was focused on that. I kind of was telling myself, I'm burning the boats. Tree's still there. Nathan's running it. We're just going to deal with that. Let him take care of it. But just, without me being there, and just, I don't know, just kind of slowly just kind of like dropped off and slowly just sort of faded into oblivion. and then over time, so my main guy, went on to other things. And then, so I just had it under my own thing. And then I moved all the inventory to Empire BMX. So they've been our shipping house for the last 5.5 years. And so we just kind of reduced it down to like a Shopify store. So we went from, it was like 25 something country, distribution in 25 different countries, blackout distribution, QBP, all the channels. We had all the channels, and it just kind of just dwindled down into this Shopify store, and every sale went through that. And so yeah, it's sad to say it kind of fell off, and then so quite a bit. And so, but I never sold it or anything, because I was always like, I'm going to come back to it. I got way more ideas, and some really interesting ideas of products that have been in my head. And that's, those products still need to be made and put out there.
Nice. I mean, not nice, but nice.
Interesting.
Well, I don't know. It's cool that you knew from the get-go that it wasn't like a goodbye forever kind of thing. It was just, I intentionally putting this on ice, and I'm going to get myself into a place I want to be with life and then come back. And the nice part of it is to hear, sounds like you're there and you're ready to come back.
Yeah. 10 years later, but the timeline was way longer than I tried to be, but yeah, we're and I'll say I'm almost there, but I'm in a position now that I can start to slowly start ramping things up now, and we're coming back with it. So I think on the face of it, it's going to look like, we're here again. And
nice.
And yeah, it's good.
I mean, we're BMX riders. We both know when we say another try, it's going to take a lot longer than we thought. And I like to think too that, we're confident as BMX riders. So it's really easy to look at this giant task, same way looking at a trick that's really hard, and simplify it down. And then I don't know if you're the same way, but you just find more things along the way that it might not quite be as simple as you thought.
Yeah. So
you're here now. I'm glad to hear it. I forgot to say this before we recorded, and I love that I'm going to say this now, because people are just going to wonder what this means. They're not going to find out. Let's not talk specifically about what we did before this podcast in here, because I'm going to release this potentially tomorrow. So,
okay.
So no one's going to know anything. It's a secret project, and I love it.
Okay. Super.
Yes.
Super good.
So everything that we talk about, you can just talk about us, assuming that none of that even happened.
Got it. All right.
Yes.
Hopefully I got the assignment.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah. We'll be good. So when it comes to Tree, I mean, you had a lot of innovative things that you came up with throughout the years. And I think it'll be fun to have this conversation hitting along those as they happened. And we could go, like I said before, all the way back to the very beginning of how it even started in the first place.
Okay. It started in the first place when I was 10 years old. I guess I wasn't doing anything with it, but that's just I was just, I was just, I was riding, I guess I've been riding a bike since I was 8 or whatever, maybe 10 or something. I don't know what age I was, but then I got into BMX racing at age 13.
Mm.
And, but just leading up to that, like, I had this, I had this Mongoose Moto Mag was my first, bike that I got at the flea market. And my older brother, like, told me stories about him, riding a BMX bike and stuff. And so I was like, I thought that sounded so cool as a little kid. And so I got this Mongoose Moto Mag that was like 5,000 pounds of, super heavy duty spokes and steel rims and everything. It was like a motorcycle. And so I just rode that thing around and tried to jump off curbs. And that got me in, anyway, the point is that it got me into, like, I don't know, just like working on the bike and like tinkering around and tightening the bolts and figuring out stuff. And then I just kind of had to become mechanically inclined to like understand how to deal with my bike. And so that turned into me like grinding on bike parts, and later on got into racing at 13, so I wanted to make my bike light. So then I was grinding on stuff. I was cutting things down and whatever to try to make my bike lighter. And I had a grinder. I would just take a C-post clamp with my finger and just try to take all the metal off of it, make it thin as possible to customize it and everything. And so while I was in school, so I started, I don't know where this came from. I just started wanting to, like, maybe I just draw bike parts. I was just doodling in class, daydreaming and not paying attention in school. And so I was just drawing bicycle parts. And like, I have it somewhere. I don't know where it is, but I got these old booklet of just my ideas with just totally stupid ideas. Like, I'm just like, like a string for a down tube, and like,
oh, that's funny.
And like all this stuff, like and strings for a top tube, but definitely wouldn't even work, you know what I mean? Like, and stuff like that. So I had all these different like goofy ideas that I was playing with, and I would read mountain bike magazines to like see what technology they were doing and kind of copying stuff I saw from there. And so it just became a thing. Like, I just kind of kept growing in me, and I just, I'd get the magazines and look at the bike parts, and it was just really, but I was riding, it wasn't like only just interested in the bikes. I was, we had trails and we were shredding and, going to races. I was going to, USA Grands race in the for the final year. And until I think I stopped racing probably when I was 18, which is 1998. No, probably, yeah, something like that. And then I got into freestyle, and then, all that, the whole path went along. But anyway, along the way, my whole point was that I was wanting to start a bike company. Whenever I grew up, like, I'm going to start a bike company. That's what I'm going to do when I get out of school. And so in the meantime, I got this smithy lathe, which is like a super cheap Chinese lathe that was like, I had a mill that came over the top. It was like a lathe mill combo thing. And then I was just like tinkering with stuff on there and making little pieces and making some parts. And then eventually, got out of high school, and I was like, I went to college, community college, because you're supposed to go to college after high school. My parents really wanted me to do that. And I was just there, and I was like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, I already know, why am I taking this math class? I already learned this in high school. They forced me to take this math class that I already learned in high school. And then I'm like, this is such a waste of time. I hated every second of it. And I'm like, and so after the second semester, I think I just dropped out of it halfway through, and somehow convinced my mother that it was not that we had like much money, but it was, but some money that she had saved up for like me to go to college. And I was like, Mom, I was whatever your age, 20, 19 years old. I was like, I already knew everything, like, I'm like, they're not teaching me anything. I already know everything they're telling me in high school. I'm going to start this bike company. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. This is the plan, and I convinced her, and she was like, so she took some of the money that she had saved up for my college tuition, and said, all right, let's throw this into a batch of sprockets, or, some bolts and some different things that I was making. And so that's kind of like where the birth of that happened.
Yeah, man, that's wow. Like, hey, spend my college money and let's start a bike company. Do you remember the first time that you drew something and thought that it could really be a product?
Probably more so when I was actually, so probably when I was like 20, which is year 2000, something like that. So then at that time, so my buddy Casey Otto and I and my friend Burks, who if anybody knows Burks McGuire, he just passed away. Actually, he had hurt his spine really bad and has been wheelchair bound for, since 2003 or something like that. And so me and him and Casey, we went to Winter Park and went to this place to go snowboarding for the winter after Woodward in the summer. And then so I brought my computer, my big ass like computer screen and my everything, and I had all that shit I brought there that was huge. And then I was like, I'm gonna start my bike company while I'm here snowboarding in the wintertime, like kind of getting away from the day-to-day stuff, and just gonna go on the mountain every day and then come home and draw bike parts. And so I guess that was the time where I kind of was like, I was designing the original front hub with the inverted spokes, and so I was like, this could be a part. Like I can actually, making the stuff, at this time.
That was the first part.
That was the first part I had an outside machine shop make. So I was, so it was that, I don't know if you remember that inverted hub that I had. It had the flange, and so that, so you actually grind on the flange. It was a thick flange, and the spokes were all on the inside, so that you can't, because the problem, you hit your spokes and it bends the spoke and damages it.
Yeah.
And so it was a front hub only. So I had a machine shop here in St. Louis make it for me. So that was the first part that somebody else made. I was making headset cap bolts. I was making like this I don't know the terminology for it. It's like a hanger for like your U-brakes that I made in my garage with spokes and stuff.
Oh yeah.
That kind of stuff. And then yeah. But that was kind of the gist of it.
So the hub that you're talking about with the spokes like that, is it like the other ones that exist now? The Primo had one where it didn't really have a flange as much as it was like inside the hub.
No, not that. No, it's like
Or are you talking about the kind of the design you guys still do?
No, it's a different. Maybe I'll try to get you a picture somehow, but it's a different. I don't know. Back in the day, there's a GT super lace hubs.
Okay.
And so they were all laced, where all the spokes were coming from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So it was almost the opposite of what I did. So all the spokes are coming from the outside, because have a traditional flanged hub. You have the one spoke goes this way, the other spoke goes this way. So mine was all the spokes go just one way.
Oh,
so
okay.
The heads were facing out, so there was, because you damage your flange when you smash your spoke over the edge of your flange.
Yeah, makes
sense.
sense.
I had all the spokes on the inside. And then you grind on the actual hub shell as your hub guard. And so it worked good. I mean, people ran those things forever and never broke any spokes, unless they got their foot stuck in their wheel or whatever, but not from grinding.
Oh, so what year would that have been?
I don't know, 2000, I think. Wow. 2000, I guess 2001, I guess 2000, probably 2001.
Man, I wasn't even riding bikes yet.
It was happening.
That's crazy. So 2001, you're starting to make hubs after you'd done headset caps and break straddle cable hangers and those kinds of things. Where's it go from there? So
then I was like, man, I got to make a sprocket. And I missed one thing to say, was that when I was still in school and looking at BMX Plus and magazines, and this was like what just pinned it for me, that I'm like, I have to do this bike company. I was just looking at the advertisements for the parts, and it'd be like a sprocket or whatever, and then there was an advertisement of like, I don't even remember who, Joey Badass like rides for our company, and you should ride these parts too because he's so badass. And I was like, your sprocket sucks. Like this was my head. Like I was like, this sprocket sucks. Like you guys are putting all your effort into like trying to convince me that you make cool shit by this guy, but your shit just sucks. So why don't you put your effort into making good stuff, and you don't need to convince me of anything. Like, yeah. And so that was, I'm starting a bike company that's going to do that. Like I'm going to start this company that I'm just going to put all my energy into designing this product and making it just work so well that I don't need to advertise it. Like it's going to speak for itself, and people are going to spread it by word of mouth. So I'll jump ahead a little bit. So that's what happened. So I had, I went to camp. I was going to Woodward in the summer for, and so I would, to just jump ahead. So the next product was a sprocket. So I made this batch of like 1/2 inch thick, 6013 aluminum, which is a little bit stronger than 6061, and it was kind of brittle. 1/2 inch thick and then 3/8 thick sprockets. These things were like just chunky. This was back when everything was just like over the top, like heavy and strong for no reason. So I got a batch of 50 1/2 inch ones and a batch of and 50 3/8 thick 36 tooth sprockets. And I went to Camp Woodward and then just sold those kind of in person to people. And then I took the and I made some stickers, printed a flyer on my printer at home that said, "This is Tree Bike Company and we make parts and this is what we're doing." And I think I had a website. And so then I sold those parts. And then I had some headset cap bolts made too at that time that were like the full aluminum ones. And that was kind of like a thing because right back then there was like this big chunky bolt that was on top. So that was my purpose. Like anything that I made, I was like, this needs to be upon what is in the market. Like, so like, I'm not just putting my name on something for no reason. Like it needs to be something about it that's the reason for it to exist. And also that it's just, and a lot of times I try to make it much more, better, so that it was just like this, there's no question, you have to run this part now because this is way better than everything else is available. And so anyway, over the time, so what happened was I go to Woodward Camp, I started going to all the contests, GB Roots and all the local ones and everything else out there. And then I would just bring my backpack. I had t-shirts, stickers, sprockets, bolts, a couple different pieces I had, and my little flyer. And I would just go to every single person and be like, "Here, do you want a sticker?" And then, any BMXer wants a sticker. So they say yes. Then I'm like, "Here's your sticker." And I'm like, "Hey, I got some bike parts. This is sprockets. Here, look at this. This is what I'm making." And then they're like, "Dude, that's badass." And then, I would sell those shirts and sprockets and the flyer. And then, and so what happened was going to Woodward Camp, all the people that are there they go, they're in Woodward Camp, they go home back to Florida, to Washington State, to New York and California and anywhere in between. And when they go back to their hometown, like it was for me when my predecessors who went to Woodward Camp, and I was like, "Holy fuck, you are so awesome. You went to Woodward Camp." And then like, "What did you tell us everything about it?" You know what I mean? Like, and then, so I think that's what really helped spread the brand was they came back with a badass 1/2 inch thick tree sprocket on their bike. And then everything else, all their other stories. And so then they drop seeds in all those different places all over the country, or, internationally too, the people who went back home to wherever they came from. And same thing with the contests and all those things. And that's how we were able to spread by word of mouth, purely just letting the product sell itself.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty genius when you think about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really probably comprehend it at the time, but I was just kind of like, I was like, this is how I'm going to do it, and I didn't really comprehend the effectiveness of it or whatever. And so with that, within a few years, then then Garrett Burns, I gave a sprocket, and then with, Taj and Joe Rich, and then I think, this in my memory, I don't know if I think Taj had a one of our sprockets on his bike and one of a photo in a magazine, and then they were running. So he was running a sprocket, and some of the T1 guys, and they made their own sprockets. So like T1 guys, the gods of BMX at the time, were like running tree sprockets when T1 made sprockets, and they're like not riding their own product and running my product. And then they went on that world tour. So they went everywhere, South Africa, Australia, just everywhere they went. And so then I got emails, I guess not phone calls, but I got emails of people saying, "Hey, we want to distribute your stuff in South Africa and Australia and New Zealand." And so I think that world tour then made, all this by word of mouth international, because I had not done one advertisement. It was all just like you had to know somebody who saw it, in person. And so we were distributed. And at the time, all it was USA made stuff. So we were distributed in Israel. We're selling American made sprockets to China and Taiwan and Japan, Singapore, Greece, Kuwait, all the countries in Europe. What else was there? Yeah, not Colombia, but Ecuador, and Canada, and just I don't know, yeah, it was nuts. Yeah, it was really crazy.
That is really crazy. Just total organic growth from the fact that you were at Woodward and people bought these things and then seeded it throughout the entire world.
Yeah. And the thing was that it worked, so that like at the time, so I was making it out of 7075 T6 aluminum. Well, the first batch was 6013. It just made 100 total sprockets, and then I heard about 7075, which was twice the price, but it was basically twice as strong as the 6061 aluminum that everybody else was using. And so I was a little afraid that it was like going to price myself out and make it too much, but it was like it just worked. And I was frustrated as so all these parts I kind of just made them for myself. Like I was like, what do I want to have on my bike? Like what do I think would be good? And so I would buy new sprockets, that were supposed to be strong, and I would go do on the street spine at Ramp Riders in St. Louis. I'd do a sprocket chunk on the spine to jump over, and I look at my sprocket, and I already dented the teeth. And I'm like, this thing is made of Play-Doh. Like this is not, we need stronger metals. And so it was just, so then this sprocket, we sold, hundreds of thousands of these sprockets all over the world for so much time. And I've only had, just a handful of original tree sprockets come back that were damaged in some way. And so, I mean, it just did the job, and then that time that sprocket trucks were really in style. And so it just let you and that's kind of one of the two, was one of my sayings I was saying in my head was just like, I just want you to be able to just ride your bike. Like, I don't want to like ride my bike trying to make sure I don't break it, or trying to be soft on it, or not be able to fully like ride my bike to the extent that I want to like shred my bike, so that's part of what I was trying to accomplish, was just to make your bike just function. And I guess a lot of stuff just came from frustration to just of a mechanical thing. So I just remember when my family bought a vacuum cleaner, and it was a cheap vacuum cleaner from Walmart or whatever, and like it didn't suck stuff in, like it just didn't work. I'm like, this thing has one job. It's supposed to vacuum and suck stuff into the vacuum. It just barely did that. And I'm like, so those are my inspirations for like, I want to make products that do what they're supposed to do. Like, and that was like, part of it. So
Tree, inspired by a crappy vacuum.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of inspirations.
How funny is that? But it's absolutely true. And I mean, it's the same story that led to like Standard and companies like that, in that the products weren't doing what they needed them to do, and it was breaking and not holding up. So they made something that would.
Yeah. Yeah. And then everybody bought it because they're like, thank you. That's what I was thinking, like that's why I was saying I designed it for myself. I was the customer, I was the customer, I was like, I was the and so I had this, I had the same, I don't know, desire or whatever for something that was, or part, same need for parts as everybody else at the time, because it was a hole in the market,
Yup. And you did your best. I mean, that's engineering at its finest. You see a problem and then you engineer the solution to the problem.
Yeah.
Fascinating. At what point are the current hubs called straight pull?
Yeah.
Okay. So at what point does that come into the picture?
So, and so as far as names for the parts, I'm either like super literal. I come up with a super literal name like straight pull hub, or I come up with something that has to do with wood. So those are so if you look at the names of everything, it's like just so literal to like, this is, the 4130 chromoly sprocket, or then there's like, or the original sprocket, but but then we have I'm coming out with the hubs that are going to become in the future called birch hubs. And then, we had the canopy stem, like, or the Okan fork was like the heart, because the forks were heat treated, and the Okan wood is some tree in Africa that's like supposed to be the hardest wood. And so I don't know, anyway, that's part behind the naming. But your question was about the, when did the straight pull hubs come into play? I don't know what year. That's kind of fuzzy. I don't know what year that kind of was.
Would it have been way after what we're talking about now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're probably like in, I don't know, I might be totally wrong, 2008 or something like that, kind of area. And so I don't even know where I kind of started coming up with that, but I mean, I do know that, because I was that hub design I had before, I was just making front hubs. I never made a rear hub of the first incarnation of the tree hub.
Yep.
And but I was like, where's the problem? The problem is on the J bend. Like, there's tensile strength and there's yield strength. So tensile strength is being able to pull the spoke itself is the length of the spoke, and that's the tensile strength.
Okay.
So you would never be able to pull a spoke apart in your hand ever, but you could bend one with your fingers.
Yep.
And that's the yield. And so I was like, that's the weak point on the spoke, is that J bend on the traditional spoke.
Yeah.
That's where it's got the yield problem. And so that's where I was like, man, these straight pull, I've seen these I always kind of I always looked at mountain bike magazines and stuff just to get ideas to apply to BMX. And so they're always way ahead of us technologically. And so then I was like, man, straight pull spokes would be super badass and way stiff and everything. And so that's where I came up with that. So that design actually, but all those straight pull mountain bike hubs are built off of 32 spoke rims, because that's their kind of standard, and ours was 36.
Yeah.
So creating a 36 spoke straight pull hub was really interesting because the reason is because there's so many spokes in there, and it's the hub is actually 5 cross instead of like a traditional 3 cross or 4 cross. And it actually reverses itself, and if that makes any sense, but it's like, the flange diameter, if I can portray this correctly, but like the way the spokes, that this 5 cross pattern is actually reducing the flange diameter kind of like on paper by a millimeter of a smaller diameter, because it's like pulling it from such an angle.
I see. And then it's just going at much sharper of an angle.
Yeah.
Because it's going straight, it's able to go where these, even to just do 3 cross, you always end up with like the divot in the side of the flange, just because naturally, it's bending into it and you're riding the bike and there's the forces there. It makes sense.
Yeah. So then the way I designed, so I used SolidWorks as my drawing program, as a 3D drawing program. And then, so I built it in there. So then I drilled, I drill the hole at any angle I want. So the hole just goes straight to the spoke. So it's just a perfect straight line. So there's no flex at all. So if anyone's ever rode those hubs, you'll know, like, it's like the stiffest wheels you ever ride. Like, wow. And then those spokes don't break because there's nothing to break on it. It's bananas.
So you combine that with the 4D drilling on the alienation rims that drills it. So, and you have the hub and the rim that make it so your spoke is a perfect straight line with no, would it be lateral forces against it at all?
That yield, when there's that flex, I'm sure you've seen, rims that are laced up, the spokes come in there, and at that last, at the nipple, it just like, this is such a waste of,
Interesting. So if you had that combination, you would have the least amount of force that you could put onto the spoke from the flange or the rim itself, and anything that would happen would have to be external.
Yeah, like if your foot went through the wheel or whatever, like.
That's so crazy. So, man, and you came up with that because of the mountain bike world. Whew, is there anything that we needed to fill the gap from like what we were talking about between that and the hub?
Just thinking between that time was just like developing more parts. So then and I had lots of, things that I was thinking back then. So I was just like, I was saying this to people. It's like, I'm not or thinking to myself too. I was like, I'm an artist, it's like I'm left-handed, and but I should be right-handed. I had some like nerve damage in my right arm when I was born, and so I naturally became left-handed. And so I think in my head kind of got wired a little bit differently because I'm left brain, but I don't know, whatever. But like, so I see like mechanical design as art, like is the way I'm kind of like visualize, the way I have a relationship with it. And so that was like my art, was to like think of mechanical design and how to build stuff to work like functionally. And so then I just designed, these parts, but then I got very busy with like, now I got the bike company to run and take orders and pack, ship stuff and like manage people and deal with, putting the word out there and like, and all that stuff. And so the things I felt like I was good at was, in person, one-to-one, kind of, marketing, the brand and showing people that stuff. And I love doing that because it was, it's like, here's my art, check it out, like, oh, I like that. Oh, that's a great feeling that you appreciate what I'm making, and then designing the parts. But yes, running the bike company, trying to be a manager of my buddies that I hired to do jobs for me that did not work. Was not in the early 20s was not functioning so well with like trying to tell my friends what to do and shit was not working out so well and efficient. And so those are all the challenges that come along with,
throw riding into there too. Like trying
riding,
to figure out when to ride.
Yeah, and then riding and and the bike company always has, what do you call it? Like hindered like my riding time, you know what I mean? So it's like that, ever since it came into play, I was just like so hyper focused on the company. And then so like, it's like, yeah, you got this bike company to get more involved in the BMX, but it's like kind of getting me out of it because I'm not actually doing it because I have to work on the bike company. But I loved it. That was my, but we still rode tons, you know what I mean? But just over the years,
yeah,
because I got more and more involved with the bike company.
You said hundreds of thousands of sprockets. That is like an unfathomable thing. That is wild to think about. That, I mean,
yeah. And
crazy.
I kept on making them, and I was just like, I was afraid because I was like, how many people are going to buy this? Like, I don't even know, like I was just like, okay, here's another batch. Like, is this going to sell? Okay, I ran out. I'm out of stock. Like, okay, I guess I'll make some more. Like, I just kept going. I was like, how many people are going to buy this? I was just afraid to keep making more batches because I was like, I must have tapped the market out. There can't be this many people buying this thing, So
yeah.
And it also helped too. Is like we were like that was a transition point where 40, 42 sprockets to 36, and then 33, and then we were on the 30 tooth, and then we got down to the 25 tooth, and then we got, like so, and then I started making, 22 tooth, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, and then 36 and 34 or 44 and 45. So I had, every single, size in the world, and so.
Yeah, and that's definitely a side effect of just the evolution of BMX in terms of things when they were all breaking all the time, got way too heavy and overbuilt. And then it went the other way to see how light it could go and still function. And then I think today we're kind of at a happy medium where people who want overbuilt can get it and people who want underbuilt or super light can get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And my BMX racing background, like I was just always nerding about like lightweight, like and that so I love that lightweight craze because I was like, how do we make this as lightweight as possible and still like do the job, and I still design like that now. Like I'm always trying to just make it as light as possible and as least amount of pieces as possible, and then do the job, without breaking. So
yeah, so I guess we could catch up to speed on from when you did the hub design with the straight pull up to when things kind of started for the answer of the what happened to Tree.
Yeah, probably there's in between there. We were just like kind of growing, and so we had had the manufacturer in Taiwan. They would ship us like, I was like, oh, I don't have the money right now. Well, let's just send you 50 grand worth of stuff so you can like just get it and sell it. You know what I mean? And so then that kind of kept on happening where I get 20 grand, 50 grand, a little bit, so I was just getting like, kind of in the hole with them, but I needed the material and I needed the products to have it to sell. And I was always kind of I would always buy too, like, like, okay, if you buy 500 or whatever, like 500 pieces of this, then your price is this. And if you buy 1,000, you're going to save 20 cents. And I'm like, I want to save that 20 cents. Like, I always had the tendency to be like, all right, let me get the big batch. We got to make we got to be able to, make the margin. So we're, so the business is working and stuff, and so then I would like, I would always buy big batches of stuff and have all the product. And then, but yeah, that was the process. And then, I don't know, but yeah, in the hindsight too, kind of like the precursor to the dwindling of Tree also was sort of, I was getting, fronted from there, but I wasn't actually borrowing money from the manufacturers. So I wasn't borrowing money back then. I had a couple of credit cards, but in hindsight, what I know today, what I should have done back then, because I was also just kind of stuck in a point, and that's kind of what made me go, okay, let me get into this real estate thing to kind of get me out of this hole, which took me 10 years, which is not part of the plan at all, and then get to where I'm at now. But I should have borrowed money for Tree at that time when I was sort of like in kind of a pickle, to get the juices flowing again and so forth. And I just didn't comprehend that. And the way I was raised was like, don't borrow money and it's stupid to have debt and all that stuff. And so that's kind of where I think I would have made a correction if I had done it again today.
Yeah. And things happen the way that they did so that you could come back and know that now and approach things from a more educated mindset, because who knows what would have happened back then if you did take on that debt and then things keep going. Like, you never know what could have happened.
Yeah. True.
So what are some of the other things that you kind of helped innovate in the BMX world beyond the straight pull spokes, which I don't know, has anybody else in the BMX world even done that yet again?
No, there was not in recent times that I know of. I don't, and it's a really tough thing to do because the ones I've seen, because the B36 spokes, like you have to do this really intricate design that I did. A 32 spoke wheel can be really simple, and it's just like these little sticks. It's super simple on a 32 spoke wheel. So, but the way mine is, it's all of our rims are 36, unless they made a 32 hole.
Right.
Wheel, and then you could do that. And then, so yeah, I designed the straight pull spokes. And then the other thing too was like that I call it female, because a female axle was on the original Tree hub that I did instead of like the normal 3/8 axle with it. So I had a 17 millimeter 7075 T6 aluminum center axle with 3/8 bolts on the front hub. And then the rear hub had a 4130 17 millimeter center axle with 14 millimeter bolts in the middle. And so the challenge with that was always been the driver. So that's why all these companies have these female style hubs for the rear, but it's a 3/8 bolt, design, because it's very challenging to get like enough space in there for a bearing for your driver.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so that was the issue. So then I had like this plain bearing product kind of driver that had this polymer type of like bearing that would just slide directly on the axle. And but even the way that I had to, it's hard to describe what happened, but I had to like design it in such a way that like this driver was sort of floating in there, and then the non-drive side bearing was captured with a snap ring. So the non-drive side bearing was in charge of any pressures left or right on the wheel, and then the drive side hub shell bearing was just free. Like it was just there for the radial force, but not side to side force. It wasn't in charge of that. And then that's how I made it. I don't know. Anyway, that's how I made it possible for that driver to work on the 17 millimeter axle.
So you kind of pioneered doing female hubs or female axles on hubs then?
I think I got it from G Sport George, because he had those old, like, because he had his G Sport hubs like way back in the day. My buddy went to Germany for a family trip one time, and he came back with these 100-pound G Sport hubs with 20 millimeter steel center axles and just like all this insane stuff. And so he had this female design, and that goes back to the tensile strength and the yield strength. So so when you've got like a 3/8 axle like this, it's easy to bend this thing.
Yep.
But when it's stiffer, so all this is stiff, then to bend this 3/8 bolt, you got to like pull it out.
Right.
And that acts on the tensile strength again. This is all yield, and so this is easy to do this, but like you got to like pull the bolt apart when your center axle is really stiff. And so that was the philosophy behind that. And so that's why I made it that way to make the axle stronger.
Makes
and then the
sense.
14 millimeter axle in the back with an actual real 14 millimeter bolts, where people were not too many companies are still not doing that till today because of it's difficult to get the bearings to work.
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. There's not a lot of space there to put something inside the driver with it filling that area. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Is there anything else in that world innovative?
Yeah. So as far as animations, there's we did the tree bars. I threaded, instead of having bar ends, we threaded like we have the bar ends that are like threaded, and they just thread set in the bar. So the bars are like tapped with threads. Because that was just annoying, that was the annoying thing, was like you had bar ends and they would just fall out. A lot of times you'd have these, they would just fall out. And so I was like, this is just a bolt, you know, you just crank this thing down and it never moves. And so that was one of the designs. I did the collet stem, which was like, I don't know, you'd have to, I don't know if you can pull up a picture. I said, oh no, I don't think I sent you a picture of it.
I can find it. It was tree collet stem.
Yeah. So that was like a stem that was pretty wild when we were trying to come up with like,
oh, holy cow. There it is.
Crazy different ways to like try to make a stem work, you know. So
trying to figure out a good photo to pull up here. This one works. So can you kind of explain what's going on there?
I actually got one right here.
Oh, well, that works. I'll still keep this.
Well, I don't have it taken apart, but yeah, it's just basically, where's my camera? So it's just this piece. So it's like 3 components here. I don't have the tools to take this apart right now, but
that's
like,
okay.
So there's like this compression device in the middle.
Yep.
So when you tighten, you know, these 2 bolts, this tightens your steer tube. And then, so you're supposed to tighten all these first completely, and then you can tighten this after you're completely done tightening these to tighten your handlebars. And so the point of this was just to make something that was like super knee friendly and just super smooth because there's no bolts on the back of it. So that was the piece about that. Wow. This is really lightweight too. So
I'm not gonna lie, if I had seen that before, I just didn't realize and didn't know. That's so crazy.
Yeah. So that was one. I don't know, but we did chromoly sprockets. There were spline drive, like this. I guess this is one here.
I have 2 of those that are at a right angle because I cased 6-foot quarters on coping, airing out really high, and couldn't save it.
So I did make that too thin. So this is like the first version of it. So, well, this is 2 different size sprockets, but so this is the
I had 2 of the V1s.
Yeah, the V1 was super thin.
But I loved it. I loved the way it looked. I just needed to be better and not sprocket case airing out of a quarter.
It was. So I made the version 2 that like beefed it up because I was trying to make it too light, and then I did mess up with this one because it but these did bend, and so we beefed it up and made it, you know, much beefier, and it's heavier because it's steel, but it's just super simple. There's the spline right in the middle is all built in. And so I love this sprocket too. This is a fun one to ride.
Did you come up with spline drive for sprockets?
Yeah, so I came up with that, and I was just trying to like simplify things, and so that's the thing I created too, was the spline drive interface that goes on the tree, you know, sprocket. So this is kind of like the little insert thing. So Phil Wasson, the writer from Kansas City, he had a machine shop, and so him and I kind of actually developed this interface together because he had the machines, and so he was like the one in charge of like kind of putting this together as far as the how this interface fits. And
I love sprocket spline drive, and I know so many other people do as well, partially because of the issues with bolt drive in that the holes aren't usually, everything's not perfect, so you end up with the tight spot in your chain that the spline drive helps with. But then also, I like to focus on having good chain alignment, and it's just so much harder to get the spacing perfect on both the spindle and between your sprocket bolt hole and your crank when you do, you know. So thanks for making that, because it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, and then also, like, you know, it's think about this too, like when you got a bolt drive sprocket, you're pedaling, especially if, you know, like you're really cranking, your right arm is attached to the sprocket, and then your left arm is attached to the spindle, which is attached to your right arm, which is controlling the sprocket. So like it's like, it's not as even between the 2 arms, but when you have the spline drive, it's just attached to the spindle, so equally, you know, it's equal force going into the sprocket from both arms.
I see what you're saying. So you're almost putting like a oblong tilted force on it to one side.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, but yeah, some other parts, you know, the ergo seat. I just happen to have this all back here.
Hey, I would too if I made this stuff up.
I made this little shrine thing.
I mean, I'm sitting here with samples of alienation brakes and brake lever parts and tubes and all kinds of stuff here too. Like
exactly,
when you're proud of this stuff and helping out with it, you keep it around.
Yep. And I play with it like when I'm just like, you know, I mean, this is like where I'm doing my real estate stuff. I got these little bike parts. I'm just playing with them in my fingers when I'm talking to people on the phone.
I mean, this has literally been me the entire time we've been talking, holding the bearings on this lever blade and just doing this.
That's a good little, what do they call that with the fidget spinners or whatever? You know,
yeah. So what's up with the seat?
So yeah, this is the ergo seat. So same thing with this. It was just like, you know, this is a great design. And I guess I could say too that I had some precursors to this, but I never came out with anything. I had like this titanium post and I had without rails in it. And so I was working on something like this, but I just never kind of got it to a place where, you know, where it was going to work. And then the pivotal post came out. And so that was a better, you know, option to go with. But all the pivotal seats were like, just, you know, uncomfortable in my opinion. And, you know, you're growing up in the racing days, like you had like those Odyssey Svelte seat or forgot the name of the other one, but they just have like, it's just a thin, it's just got this, you know, this nice ramp off the back of it to like really, you know, hold your ass on it. And so I had custom made this foam. And so this thing is thin, but it's super comfortable. Like this, like, I honestly think this is more comfortable than our fat, because we make a fat version with the thick foam. Yeah. This is more comfortable than the fat version just because of the way we were able to get this to design. And then, and the same thing with the fat seats. So I designed those. And then, so this is a really big, you know, demand that people have from us is this seat, and I'm working on a redesign of connection for these right now too.
Nice.
And, I don't know, what else did we make? I don't know. There was, the brake cables.
I feel like I remember seeing people who just keep reupholstering or re-putting material on their tree seats.
Oh yeah,
like indefinitely, just so they can keep riding that same shape.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we were dry for a long time. We didn't probably have any seats. Well, yeah, during COVID, so we didn't have any seats. So I was like, let's order some more seats, and then they were like, oh yeah, well, that's gonna come in 2 years.
Right, like, I remember that.
And they're like, and then the manufacturer I think was making seats for Peloton. And so then Peloton's sales grew because everyone they couldn't go out in public and they could ride their bike in their own apartment or whatever. And so they were making these Peloton seats or whatever they were making. And so that's what pushed our batch, back 2 years.
Yeah, it makes sense. Huh.
And but it was even longer than that. Then I think we finally, ended up getting them. And so yeah, and we did the pegs, and there's just different parts, like some parts may not have as much, craziness to it and, as others, but.
The pegs, I remember. The pegs were like a big deal when they came out too, because they were super light. They were one of the first that I can remember anyway, that were in that category. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the 70-75 T6 aluminum pegs. And so my idea behind that was, at this point in time, everything that we're grinding is pretty much the same stuff the skateboarders grind, and we all got wax, and we're waxing ledges and rails even, and then skate parks and so forth. And so skateboarders have been grinding the little skateboard, with aluminum trucks, and so it's the same deal. And so, except their aluminum on there is not even, is a little more friction than the 70-75 does. So it's our pegs are even faster than a skateboard truck. So if a skateboard were to grind it, that's pretty much anything a BMX were to grind at this point in time. Yeah. And then that would be, so that's where it came up with the aluminum pegs. Huh. And they grind well, they work really well, and they're super lightweight, and they're butted inside. And so, yeah, I mean, they're, not as fast as steel, but or plastic, but they're definitely fast enough, as fast as you need it to be.
Yeah. You feel like there's still more innovating to do in the BMX world?
Yes. So that's part of this is I have a lot more ideas that I just never came out with yet. And so I just have more, more creations that need to come out. And so I'm working on one big game-changing project that's going to change everything.
Oh, dang.
And so that's kind of part of the push too, is just this other part I've been wanting to make for probably for the longest time, but it's like, it was difficult to figure out how to do it. But I'm figuring that out. And then, so that'll be a big thing. And lots of other pieces. And we were making frames before too. So there's a piece to the story is that, so Tree was making frames and forks, and so that categorized us as a frame company. And so I proved my point to myself that I could grow the business, you know, by word of mouth and, you know, to all those different countries and stuff. And so I was like, all right, you know, well, let's be like a normal bike company now. Let's do advertisements and riding events and like get team riders and like, let's see what happens, you know, because I think that, you know, it was like, I think now we can like try the other stuff now that I proved my point to myself. And then, so we had gotten a lot of team riders, you know, Clint Reynolds and Alex Magellan and Timmy Theus and I'm drawing a blank.
We can't forget, I have a note in here. We have to shout out Bobby Altizer and Eben Fisher.
Yeah, Bobby Altizer, Eben Fisher. Yep, exactly. And many more people. I'm just drawing a blank at the moment. But and so at that time we were doing some advertisements. So I was putting, and that was kind of part of it too. A bunch of money into the riders. You know, it's just we just had so much expense, and so it was just like, man, it's like every payroll I was just like, somehow the money just got to the account just in the nick of time to be able to pull it off. You know, it was like nuts. And so I was just kind of, that was kind of part of that struggle. It was just like I was just living paycheck to paycheck inside this international brand that I created, and that was part of the challenge as well.
Yeah, you said two words that are very intriguing to me when it comes to BMX parts and innovation. You said game changing. I have a whole entire, like, I could credit a lot of the growth of this YouTube channel and any type of like way that people look at me to do with the series that I kept putting game changing in there with the planetary hubs. And so if and when you get that done and ready to go and you need somebody to help promote a game changing thing, I have a history with that.
yeah, no, definitely gonna hold you.
But either way, I mean, it's super cool to hear that, because when I was writing that question, asking if there was more innovating to do in BMX, there was a follow-up there of asking if we've reached a peak. And then when you said you have something that will be game-changing and huge, it's like, no, we haven't reached a peak yet, and there's still innovation to come. That's awesome. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, definitely is. And also, before I was talking about how we were making frames, and so I had this fully heat treated frame that it was called the Little Buddy, and because your bike is your best friend.
That's so perfect.
He's your little buddy. And then we had we had advertisement. My friend Geoff Brockmeyer like made this commercial for it of like this play off this. Nobody watching this video probably remember this commercial, but when I was a kid, there was a commercial of like a doll called My Buddy. So it's like, and so you got this little doll, and it was called My Buddy, My Buddy, My Buddy, and Me. And it's just this kid playing with this doll for this commercial. So we made a commercial for the bike, you know, saying My Buddy was like this bike and stuff. And
that's awesome.
And so so with sponsoring the riders and stuff, so I said, okay, we need to become a parts brand so that we can sponsor guys who have a parts sponsor. And so that's where, you know, Clint Reynolds came in, Brian Yeagle, and several of the other guys who had like, you know, were sponsored by, or Clint had his own thing as Credence, and then Verde and Sunday Bikes and stuff for the other guys. And so that was the ability to kind of like get into those, you know, that whole scene of that stuff. And so that was the purpose of like stopping making the frame and just focus on parts. And then, but anyway, I do want to come out with that frame again. So I think I'm going to come out with the frame under a different name. And I think I'm thinking about calling the company Little Buddy Bikes. So people can comment, I guess, on the thing if they have any feedback on that. And then and just make, you know, some frame and forks and stuff under that heading.
It just makes me think of Ted and Thunder Buddy, if you ever saw that movie.
What movie was that?
Ted. with
Oh,
the
the movie is
teddy
Ted.
bear.
Oh, I didn't see the movie. No, I've been purposely avoiding watching that movie.
Well, either way, in that movie, there's a thing about Thunder Buddies, and it just made me think about that. But that's cool to hear. I mean, that's a big deal too. Man, it's so cool to think that you, like how we mentioned earlier, putting things kind of on ice, and now moving forward, it seems like you're just full steam, like back at it.
It's I mean, I don't have too much time still right now, but I'm doing things in such a way that I'm able to get things to happen. You know what I mean? So like, because I'm still very, very involved with real estate, and it's taking up a ton of my time, but, and I'm getting to the point where now I'm like, you know, in 2 more years, I'll definitely be in that retired thing I was talking about, you know, 100%. But right now I'm still like kind of pushing on this, but I found people that I'm working with that can help me accomplish things that I, you know, and I guess I'm doing it in a smarter way now, I guess, sort of, I don't know, to get things done. So yeah, so we're moving along.
It's awesome to hear, man. It's not super often that you hear of a resurgence that big in BMX.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
That's exciting. I think there's a burning question that every single person that knows you who's watching this right now is wondering, and it has to do with food and raw meat. And I'm not gonna lie, I heard something about raw meat or something or another, but like I don't really know anything about it for real firsthand. So could you give me a little bit of like why people would ask about that?
Well, I've been eating, so I'll tell the story. So well, okay. I read this book when I was you know, I don't know, was it 19 or something, 20, and that was part of my inspiration to kind of help me kind of, you know, or push, you know, to get me motivated to start the bike company too. So it was this book called Awaken the Genius, or Awaken Your Genius, I think. And so this guy was, you know, everyone's a genius, you know, I mean, it's just, we're just not tapping into our own, you know, genius of ourselves or whatever. And then so and then at the end of the book, he was like, a genius takes care of his body, and he gets proper sleep, and he also eats well. And he was proposing like a clean vegan diet to eat. And I just ate like everybody else up to that point. And so that was that same year, or, you know, we went snowboarding, and that winter when I brought my big computer to start designing the you know, the parts, and be like, all right, I'm really starting my bike company, and I'm designing these bike parts out here. And so it was a transformative time. So that's when I got into the diet of eating like a raw, or a clean vegan diet. And so I just went to the grocery store and got a baked potato and oatmeal and just whatever I could comprehend at the time of like clean food. And so I just put just as little about a margarine on it as possible, just to get it, you know, to be, you know, not dry enough to go down the hole, you know, and, like, and make everything edible. And so I ate that way for a week as just an experiment to see how I felt. And I felt so good. I was just like, this is good. I'll just keep doing this, you know? So whenever I made diet changes, I would always try to do like 100%, whatever that was, you know, so I could, whatever my results were, I could feel that, okay, this was the result of doing this, and not to be confused with, you know, if I was mixing it up. And so, yeah, so that I did that. So I went home that summer, felt, you know, when I was in, you know, outside, I sweat. I felt like I was sweating pure water because I was just, you know, eating clean as opposed to all the junk food I used to eat. And then, so I ate a clean vegan diet for, you know, I don't know what it was, maybe four years probably. And then I was in a vegan restaurant. And actually at that point too, I did start to, so we had a tree house in St. Louis. We called it the tree house, which was like a house we had downtown with a bunch of the dudes that lived there, a BMX house. And it was the first, you know, home that I had, you know, most of us had away from our, you know, from our nest, living with our parents. And then, so we all were living there, and we were all broke, and we were, you know, trying to just ride BMX, and, you know, we had Ramp Rider skate park and stuff. And so, okay, along that, I was eating this clean diet, but then we found this, what we call the magic dumpster. And so it's like Ashley Hoffman and Casey Otto and all the guys that we used to hang out with. We just like all the we're the Dinglings. I guess that's another story. Dinglings is my gang in St. Louis, and my fellow bike riders that we grew up with. And so we would go to this dumpster that had Entenmann's donuts and all this stuff in there, so that it was full of just junk food. And so we were going and they were bringing that home and stuff. So I did start to like kind of fall off when I was eating some of these Entenmann's donuts and junk food at the time. And then anyway, back to the restaurant. So I was at this vegan restaurant. They had some food. I was eating there, and there was books and information, and there was a book about eating raw vegan. And so I kind of flipped through it, and I was like, dang, this is like the next level, like don't even cook. Why are we even cooking our food? Let's eat just, raw fruits and vegetables and just eat like fresh food. And so I bought that home, read that book, and just started experimenting with that. Same thing. Let me try this for a week, see how I feel. And I was like, man, this is great. Like, and so with that, my sense of smell, my sense of taste, and my sense of hearing and sight, like all kind of clarified. I didn't go from like having, a bad vision to 20/20 vision, not in that sense, but more of the sense of like if you're drunk and you kind of, it's opposed to being, I was literally intoxicated, from kind of the foods that I was eating and stuff. And so I detoxed, I got less toxic. And so then sort of, the feeling that you feel when you're, kind of drunk compared to being sober, but in a good way. It was just like, this felt peaceful. Like I felt like inner sense of peace. My self-worth went up, my confidence. And so it was wonderful. But yeah, so I was very hungry. I was eating a lot of food, because there's not much calories and fats and fruits and vegetables. And even 6 months into the diet, my sense of touch opened up after I just started to kind of feel like, and then as time went by, riding my bike, and I was just I got very, very thin because and I did a fast over the summer and was very thin, and I was just my muscles burned when I was like riding the ramps and stuff, and so I was like, that was a little kind of a sign. And then I was like, one time I ate an entire watermelon and in one sitting, and I was so full, like I could not put a drop of anything else, in my mouth, and I was still hungry. And so I was like, okay, I'm on to something, but this isn't how it's supposed to be. This is not the perfect human diet. If I'm eating this perfect, what the philosophy was behind this diet was, this was the perfect food for you to eat. And so I'm like, if I'm eating that and I'm starving after eating all of it, when my stomach is full, this isn't adding up. And so then I went to Interbike in the fall, and so while I was there, I was doing the booth with Blackout, the tree booth next to Blackout BMX. And then so I went to the bathroom, went to on the way back, there was like a little alley or whatever, back to the convention center, or in the convention room. And there was like some trays, and there was like some strawberries and some fruit and stuff. And so like I went and like, because I was always hungry. So like, oh, food, like, let me grab some of this stuff and eat some strawberries. And then I went back, and then there was some more strawberries with some stuff, had a little bit of whipped cream. So I wiped the whipped cream off, ate the strawberry. And then like the next one was like, you know what, I'll just leave the whipped cream on there, ate some with whipped cream. There was some cake. And then I went back, and then I went back, and a little cake, a little more, a little more, a little more. And then I was just getting like, energy from it, because I was starting to get some calories, and that spiraled into like, eventually there was like crab, like fried crab ragoon, like, rolls and stuff. And I ate like these fried, whatever. And so I came back, had some, some energy, some calories and some fat in my body. So I was like, kind of feeling pumped from it, but, and then that night had felt like a volcano was in my stomach, like,
Yeah.
like puke, but I didn't wanted to shit, but I did it. And I was just, my stomach was just I was just so fucked up and sick and stuff. And so this was like, all right, well, when I get back, I'm just going to like eat fast food for a week as an experiment. This is another test, because I was just fantasizing about eating heavy foods, on this diet. And so I went back home, after the trade show, and then I like ate like fast food. Like I wasn't eating any of this junk for, for years, so I had like Pizza Hut and Hardee's and whatever else. And so I got energy for that. And it was interesting. I kind of got interested in like learning about Prozac for some reason. I was just reading about it and reading like what it felt like to be on it. And I don't remember the name of it. There was a new word that was created to describe this feeling of inner torment and like retching within because of Prozac, because it didn't exist like, this kind of description of this, this feeling. And all the stuff I read about Prozac, when I ate back to the commercial food again, after I've completely ate off the map, just totally normal food, like I felt those symptoms of like way it sounded like it would feel like to be on Prozac. Like I didn't really care. My feelings were just flattened out. Like I was just like, whatever. I was like, I could just, be like a worker. Like I could just work on the bike company and like have no emotions about it. And I was just droned out just from this 1 week of eating fast food after ate so clean before that. And then I had just mucus coming out of every hole of my body and like just felt really achy and sick. But I felt I had some power and some energy in there because of the higher calories. So I was like, okay, well, obviously this is not the path, because I just, this isn't it either. So I'm like, I don't know what to do, it's like, and everything I looked at was inside the world of being vegan and being, being vegetarian. So I was like, oh, you're supposed to eat more lettuce. No, it's more fruit. No, more it's this and that. And then I stumbled across this interview with this guy who was eating raw meat. And so I read this interview and I was like, this guy is nuts. So I bought his book and read it and just started experimenting with it. And so I didn't know anybody who was doing anything about this. This is like 2005. Yeah, 2000. Yeah. So it's been 20. Yeah. So it's 2005. And so I just went to the Whole Foods and got a half a pound of ground bison and went when they used to have the food court and just went straight to the food court and just straight up just ate it right there. And I was just like, because I was so excited to like go for it when it was time to try it. And so I didn't even eat all of it. I felt satiated here, not in my stomach. Like I was like, my stomach wasn't, with being vegetarian, like I was eating until I couldn't put no more food in my stomach. And that's when I was full. But with this, like I was satiated in my head and didn't even, fill my stomach up. And then I felt peaceful. It was a calm like digestion, all the things that in the vegan world are saying how meat doesn't digest and stuff. I had all those problems with eating vegan of gas and bloating and everything else with all this vegan food. And so, so I went down that path and then that was a little harder to like say, I'll eat this exact way for a week. Cause it was just, I was vegan and I was like eating the raw meat was pretty slimy and slippery and gross to me, so it took me a little bit to get my head wrapped around that. And so I did do a little bit of cooked meat and stuff here and there to kind of get my palate back and textures and stuff back to the meat. And so also too, I was very evangelistical about being a vegan and raw vegan, and everyone was stupid and this was the perfect diet. And so
that's not common at all.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of the culture. and so I was like, I crashed on this perfect human diet that I was proposing was supposed to be the best diet to eat. And then and so I just totally fell on my egotistical face on that. And so with this thing, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to eat this way. And as long as it's working for me, like if it's working, I'm just going to do it. I don't need to tell anybody that I'm doing, whatever. I don't need to like preach about it to anybody or whatever. Or make anybody like, have to feel anything that, because I'm eating this way or whatever. And so that's how I approached it. So I've just been eating like, raw beef, raw chicken, raw pork, raw fish, all the dairy, raw, from Amish farmers and stuff like, milk and cream and butter and cheeses.
Yeah.
And raw eggs, fruits and vegetables. It's like kind of like a omnivorous raw food diet. And so it was called the primal diet. And so that's the path I went down. So now I've been eating that diet every day for 20 years now. I'm 45 years old, and And so it's still working for me. So like, I'm just, I feel, better every year, and I feel more just like kind of not, I guess, grounded, I guess, or something. And so that's my story about that. Yeah. I mean, like that's part of my mission in life too, is to put information out about, this particular way of eating, and get this information out to people to help people, along the way. So there's lots of people that I know that have healed themselves from every disease you've ever heard of, eating this way, just by, getting rid of the toxicity and pollution and stuff that's in our foods and in our lifestyles, and then eating, life-giving foods and building foods that build the body up and give you the resources to heal.
So how did you know that this was like the one? Because you had tried so many different things. How'd you come to realize like, oh, this is it?
Oh, I didn't. I was just like, because that was kind of what was different about, when I started the raw vegan, I was like, this is the one, like, this is this is the diet, this is the thing. And then that's kind of where I was saying, I fell on my egotistical face. I'm just like, I'm just going to eat this as long as this is working. Like, if this is working for me, then I'll continue to do it. If it's not, then maybe I'm supposed to do something else. So like, I don't need to like put a stamp in this and be like, this is me,
Mm-hmm.
And so, so I just ate it, and then, and still eating, still do it today, all this whole entire time. And so that's kind of been.
Yeah, I guess I more or less mean like, how does it make you feel that makes you be like, oh, I need to keep doing this?
So I guess with that, like those feelings of my senses and all that stuff, like I kept all that when I got in, when I did the, animal foods, but then I got the strength and then the stamina and like, and then my body filled out. And so that was like the, so I was like, okay, this all makes sense. And now now I feel like I got my calories that I needed. I don't feel like I'm starving all the time. And, like I feel totally satisfied, like with the satiation, you know what I mean, of food and so forth. And so that's kind of where it went. And so and then so to answer your question is that along the way I'd be really strict on a diet, but then sometimes I go out to eat with a girl, before I got married, but with a girlfriend, and go to dinner with her, and then eat the food and be like, man, this tastes good, but it doesn't taste as good as I remember it tasting. And then I go home that night, the next day I don't feel as good as I normally do. And in the morning I just craved eating raw meat, was what I was really wanting to have in the morning. So, or sometimes I'd go out to, we might do a restaurant. I feel like I got kicked in the stomach for a week just from eating at a restaurant, from eating so clean. And then you have this, the chemicals and stuff that are in the diet, or, in our foods.
Yeah. Wow. So personally, I'm definitely not anywhere near what you're doing, but I try to eat as best I can most of the time. I'm not strict where like, I'll go out to eat and I'll get some ribs and some fries and whatever. But like most of the time during the week, what I'm eating is deer bologna and fruit, like grapes and blueberries and blackberries and strawberries and oranges. And sometimes I'll have a can of pineapple. And the point I'm getting at with that is that when I get in a groove and do that a lot, it almost turns into a point where like the fruit tastes better to me. It's weird. I've noticed that. And then to hear you say that you like crave that raw meat, it's like, oh, maybe that is a real thing where it's like my body actually is feeling like that tastes better. So the immediate first thing that everyone's going to ask, I'm sure, when you talk about this is like, don't you worry about the issues that come with the raw meat? Like, I know I've eaten burgers that were undercooked and then definitely dealt with it the next couple days. Like, does that just not happen for you, or?
Yeah. So that was the transition part too, is in the beginning, because I was like, I was eating this stuff, but I was like afraid of it, I'm like, and for the first year, I didn't know another human being that was doing this other than this book I read about it. And so it was kind of pretty risky, I guess, for me to try to go down that path. And then, and then after a year, after a year, I met the author of the book and did consultations with him and met other people that were eating this diet and they were healing themselves from all different things. I didn't particularly have any diseases or anything. I just was wanting to kind of be more clear-minded.
Mm.
And then, and so I was just afraid, you know, I was eating the food, but I was afraid of the bacteria boogeyman was going to get me one day. But he never got me, like, you know, so I was eating this stuff. And then, so the guy who, his name Agenus von der Planets. And so he was the creator of this diet, the primal diet. And he was like, you know, you can eat some of this, what we call high meat, which is basically just rotten meat. And he's like, you know, there's it's medicinal, like, to eat this like rotten meat. And so I made some of it and ate that and didn't get sick from it. Actually felt it actually makes you feel really good. It's the weirdest thing. And so I eventually got over this thing. Like, I'm not like well, many years ago, but like still, you know, I'm not afraid of the bacteria boogeyman whatsoever. Like, I understand. And so there's a whole lot for me to explain to like make this make sense to everybody. but I understand like what makes you sick and what doesn't make you sick. And so that's kind of like what kind of guides me. So like we've created, you know, mankind has created, I don't know, last time I checked, it was like 70,000 chemicals that never existed on Earth. And on top of that, we like rub it all over ourselves. We live in our houses and our cars, and we eat it, and we take it as drugs and everything else. And so we're in a funny pinnacle right now because we have access, like, especially in America, let's just kind of refer to America as the easiest for me because that's where I live. But like, you know, any average person could be like, oh, I'm bored, I'm gonna go get a hot dog, you know, from the fridge, or am I hungry? I'm not sure. Well, let me just eat something anyway. You know, we have access to like nutrition, and macronutrients, maybe not so much the micros, but we got all the carbohydrates and fats and calories that we could ever have access to, like in the planet Earth, you know, in the history of planet Earth. And so we can eat as much as we want. There's no end to it. So we're getting resources from that. Our bodies are, because we're getting all that. But at the same time, it's coming with the tax, and it's coming with chemicals and preservatives and all this other stuff that's in it as well. So it's like your body's getting built up with, like, you know, the overabundance of macronutrition, but then you're also getting all this other poisoning. And so then, and that's kind of where a lot of people are getting, you know, with the heavy weight too, is your body fat protects you from toxicity. And so it makes you, your body stores it into fat, and then it makes you put on water weight to dilute toxicity and to also like store it there and put on fat and stuff like that. So people, it's easy for us to get, you know, a lot of weight on in the US because of, you know, all the toxicity that we have in our foods and the calories that we get as well, but mostly the toxicity. And so to me, as opposed to a germaphobe, I'm like like a chemical phobe, you know, kind of same kind of thing. like if someone's like spraying, you know, stuff, you know, like next to my food, I'm like, you know, don't get that in my bowl of food, you know, or whatever. Like, I don't want, you know, chemicals, you know, is kind of the way I feel about it. But to answer the question about like bacteria, it's there's a lot of foundational stuff in the science and medical system of just like, of course, this is the truth. So this is the foundation, and now let's go from here. So, but nobody looks at those initial pieces of these established truths that they just they take for granted as the truth, and they build. So then, you know, you build everything off of what you think reality is according to your perception. And so they're responding to things in such a way that they perceive, you know. So for example, like, this is a kind of made up scenario, but let's say you vomited, you get food poisoning, you go to the doctor, or you go to the hospital because you're feeling so bad. And then if you were, you know, say you had vomited, you know, also, you know, you had a, you know, at the doctor, and if they were to go test that vomit, they're going to go look for biological stuff. And they're going to come back and they're going to say, oh my God, you've got all this salmonella in your vomit. And so, well, everybody knows that's what makes you sick. So we're going to give this medicine to you. And then you take that medicine, and then it makes you feel better because of the way that medicine works. And so that makes you feel better, and you go home, and it's a good day, or, you know, it's a solution. But if you test that vomit for chemicals, they would come back and be like, holy shit, you've got 3,000 times the lethal dose of thallium, or, you know, this preservative or this chemical and that stuff, or, you know, so like, if you test for chemicals in this stuff, which we've we've done, you find out that you've got all this stuff, that's in there as well. So there's salmonella that came to the party, but the party wasn't started by they showed up to the party after the party started. And so they're there to help. So in the same, so my idea of this, this bacteria, parasites, viruses, germs, all stuff is probably 95% symbiotic relationship and maybe 5% parasitic relationship to all those germs. And in the world, we're walking, if there was no, I'm just saying germs as a general term, the world would be sterile, everything would be dead. There's more, and then the human body is, some percentages say 90% of the cells of your human body are foreign and 10% is is your body cells, because our body cells are bigger than the single cell microorganisms. And so we're mostly, by a long shot, foreign, we've got E. coli and every single bacteria stuff is all over our faces and our lips and our noses, and it's already there. Like it's just it's a relationship that we are on planet Earth with with all the other living beings that live here.
You're blowing my mind right now. Is there like a taste thing that you had to get over, and now it is what it is?
A what thing?
A taste thing.
Yeah, texture was mostly the problem. Like, so if I gave anybody like a piece, like a piece of a bite of raw ground beef, you would be like, your response would be like, oh, it tastes like meat. Like it just tastes like beef. It just tastes like without the burnt flavor. So the comparison could be, overly cooked steak compared to like a rare steak, so it's it's that direction. There's just less flavor of burnt in the meat. And then, but mostly it's the texture. So that was the, and especially growing up, like as any, where it comes from was just like slippery, slimy, is yucky, like,
yeah,
it's gross. And so like, and so that's the part to the challenge of eating the meat and the stuff. I mean, chicken was a hard one for me because it is real slippery. But that was the things, was textures was mostly the challenges, not so much the flavors.
Crazy. I definitely don't think I could do it, but I also recognize too that like it's become more and more apparent with time that not everything is good for every single person either. Like our bodies are all different, right?
Yeah. Well, we're all different because, a lot of things, but we're all different because, maybe you were playing with wasp spray when you're a kid, and then I was messing with the machine, the machine and the oils and the other stuff, and so we all kind of like get these toxicities, in this lifetime, and nutritional degradation too, just from not having certain resources, certain micronutrients and stuff. And then so we have just a different makeup, then there's that in your own lifetime, and there's also your genetics from your parents as well. And so those things make up your body as to kind of like why one guy might be sensitive to peanuts and the other guy is not. And then and people having different type of diet protocols and stuff is because they got a different mix of things going on in their body that are slightly different than the next guy.
But you didn't think you were going to get a nutrition raw meat diet lesson, anybody. But I mean, this stuff is just interesting for me to hear about, because it's definitely true that when you try to change some things up and do better with some things, you really can feel it. And then when you go back from it, you can feel it even more. Sugar's the biggest one for me. I try my best to avoid sugar as much as I can. And then the second I have a bite of it, I can feel all the muscles in my neck just going like this. And I know it's not in my head or anything. And then it's tight and you get that tension headache. And I know that that's a thing. And then like every spring I can feel it, because it happens around like Easter and we're digging and then riding trails, and I'll have the sugar for Easter, and then I'll go and dig and ride, and I can feel you break through it, almost like you worked through it in your body, and then it's gone again until you have more.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Foods affect us. And, especially that is such a, it's an extract, I mean, it's of, the sugar cane or whatever, but it's just like a crack,
It is legit crack.
It's just a different, it's a different product altogether.
So, short answer long, yes, you're still eating raw meat.
Yeah, so I'm still eating raw meat. I mean, like a pound of raw meat every day, raw eggs, fresh milk, fruits and vegetables, and so that's been my diet. So that's kind of like been something that is a big part of what I do. And I mean, I'll make a big deal out of it to myself or anything. It just, it's just something that's really important to me to continue eating that way.
Yeah. And I guess before we go back to BMX, one last thing, do you do any type of supplementation with that too?
No, I don't believe in supplements, because supplements is like, so if you're taking, iron supplement or whatever, it's fractionated, it's damaged. It's not the real thing. So like an extracted like iron supplement is like as if somebody like gave you, like you're like, hey, I have a bike with but there's no front wheel. Do you want this? And you're like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'll take that. And so you put it in your garage. And you're like, hey, I got a bike, but there's no front wheel. Okay, I'll take that. I got a bike with the front wheel. There's no. Okay, I'm just gonna just give them all to me. I think I could use this later. And because once I get that front wheel, then I can use it. You know what I mean? And so your body is like that, collecting, all these, components that are not complete. And also it's like as if all the bearings are rusted together too. It's like if you take wet clay, and kind of rub with your fingers, it's soft, but and then you go put it in a fire and it turns into a brick. And so all these supplements and stuff is like bricks, it's like, it's dead and dried up, and like, it's not the real, it is the real thing, but it's just a destroyed version of the real thing. And so, I don't believe in taking supplements or vitamins that, take from getting, from the actual food, from liver and, from has a ton of minerals and vitamins. I do a little bit of liver every day. Not every day, but more so recently. And then and just eating the foods that has it. It's more bioavailable. So then another way to look at the raw foods is when you're eating it, it comes with it's just its whole self. Like, so if you apply fire to anything, it's going to become less than what it was. So back to the bike analogy, just like put your bike on a fire pit, your tires are going to melt, and whatever. It's not going to be the thing that it was, the useful thing that it was before. And but for the most part, your grips are burnt off and your tires are burnt off, but you can still ride down the street on that thing. You know what I mean? Like, kind of analogy as well. But it's not the full potential. So eating cooked food, or especially more so like chemicals and stuff, is the really big thing, in the cooked as well. But so it's like coming with a tax. It's like you're receiving benefit, but then it's like you got to pay. So your body's got to pay back the enzymes. You got to borrow. Your body creates enzymes because the enzymes have died in the cooked food, and so you have to like do that in order to assimilate all your food. And then the tax is also the toxicity and the carcinogenic compounds that are created from cooking, the foods and all those things that are involved with it. So eating it raw is like you're getting it tax free. There's just getting all the full potential without any cost, and so your body can use all that to build itself.
Seems reasonable. Like, it does make sense when you explain it that way. Man, interesting. So to take it back to the BMX side of things, do you still get to ride?
I haven't been riding much. My bike, I just got a couple of different parts, and so I was going to put on my bike and try to get back. I haven't been riding much lately, because I get so hyper focused on whatever I'm doing, and so I just kind of haven't been. But so I'll be back out there in a little bit with some new parts and test a couple things out that I want to test and ride.
Nice. Well, if you come to Raise, hit me up and I'll come hang out and stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like it hasn't been fully explicitly stated through this podcast at this point, but might as well say it. Tree is back and you're doing stuff with it. Yeah. Not only do you have some new old stock stuff, but you've got some new orders of things. Maybe if you want to give the abbreviated version of what's going on now with Tree.
So now we've got a shipment, or we're producing spline drive, 22 millimeter spline drive sprockets, light sprocket, and bolt drive light sprocket, the canopy stem, which is a top load stem, and we're making brake cords, which is the SB power cable, which is a brake cable I designed that I think is like just kind of the best features of all brake cords is all in one brake cord, and it's pre-cut, so you just throw it on your bike. And balsa pegs, which are the flatland pegs that we're making for flatland fuel, and we sell them exclusively through flatland fuel for the U.S. sales, and then trick sticks. And so trick sticks are the aluminum 7075 T6 pegs that are like 3.5 ounces, and I was doing them 4-inch. Now this batch is going to be 4.5 because the kind of styles have changed, so people are wanting longer pegs. So same peg, just 4.5 inches long.
And people have realized that 4.5 just makes stall tricks a cheat code, or it's a cheat code for them.
Yeah, it's just it's just, in styles go, it's like super small bars, super big bars. Now we're kind of going, it's like all the, like the super duper heavy bikes, like lightweight, okay, back somewhere in the middle. And so we just kind of go through these journeys, in BMX as a family, and we kind of go through different things that seem better than other things at times.
Absolutely, but I will never go back from 4.5s. I might even go longer, because the second I put that on, I was like, oh, ice picks are just easier now. This is great.
Yeah.
Sweet, man. So you'll be
and those parts, and then we also have like a batch of lost stuff that was so several years back I was asking the machine shop like if they could give me, or is there any like things in the warehouse that's left over, and they're like, no, there's not. This was 10 years ago, and there was like nothing. They don't have anything, because I was thinking if there's any just extra stock, whatever. And so just recently because I've been talking with them more and getting some new parts going and stuff, and they're like, oh, we found this in this warehouse. And so we had some old wood grain stuff that we brought in a few months back, and some other kind of onesie twosie parts of just things that we've had that we used to make. And so we've got those on the website and are sold. And then we're also getting another. Then they came back and we found another bunch of stuff. And so it was basically our color samples, like for this collet stem and 36 tooth and 33 tooth spline drive sprockets and just bar ends and just tons of different things that were just like the one color sample for red and the color sample for blue, and so we got one of each of these items that are coming in that will ship. That should be, I guess by the time this is out, this should be on our web store. So you can either pre-book them there or they'll be in stock, all that stuff too. So a bunch, I'm not even naming all the stuff. There's like a ton of shit that we'll have in stock but it's gonna be like one or two of it in some cases. So
if you see it, you better buy it before somebody else does.
Yep.
Nice, man. Well, it's been really fun to learn about the saga of Tree and how it got to where it is today, and get a nutrition lesson at the same time.
Yeah.
I remember Tree, growing up riding and stuff, and the spline drive sprockets, and obviously I rode the steel sprocket that I was talking about earlier. Just the innovation is something that I think we can never get enough of in BMX today, and I feel like it doesn't happen as much today. One, because it's not cheap to innovate, and you're essentially taking a gamble on it, hoping that people will see the value in it. And so it just doesn't happen as much as it used to. And we've landed on kind of like what works. So to see that you're coming back with things, you've got a game-changing idea you mentioned earlier. It's great. I think another innovator in the space, there's definitely room for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited to see where you go with things. And you're on Instagram, you've got the website, and we thinking about any kind of riders or anything? Anybody still hanging around?
We added a couple of guys recently. We've got somebody from Spain, and so we're kind of working on that stuff too. That's kind of happening along a little bit slower, but so we'll kind of we're slowly turning all the lights on.
There you go. Hell yeah.
There's a long, the warehouse with the long strip of light switches. So we're gonna put them all on eventually, but as we move along here.
Sweet. Well, everybody, make sure you check out what Tree's got going on. Thank you, Sam, for taking the time today to talk about all this stuff with me. And I think I'm going to put this out tomorrow.
All right. Well, we'll be ready.
Let's go, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks again, Sam. We'll see everybody next time. Later.